This dual cab here is essentially the farewell variant for the first generation Volkswagen Amarok. It's the third in the W series of vehicles which are developed by Walkinshaw Automotive in Australia, and this is called the W580X. The X meaning it's more off-road focused, sitting in between the standard W580, which is hardly standard, let's be honest. It has 20-inch wheels and looks tough like this car here, and the W580S, which is the luxury version of that. This one here costs $78,890 and brings quite a few unique features to the table. Now you might be wondering, W Series? Over the last 12 months, the W Series has made up 20% of Amarok sales in Australia, so it's a pretty significant model, and the V6 alone makes up more than 90% of Amarok sales in Australia. So something like this is actually what the Amarok faithful were asking for. Now, what makes the W580X unique? That is basically the wheel and tyre package, the suspension tune, and the stuff that has been added to this vehicle. Now the 580X shares already a bunch of things that were already developed for the other W series models, like this Amarok thing across the edge of the bonnet here. It has a unique grille, it has different infill in the front bumper, it has these wheel arch flares, decals, unique wheels and all that sort of stuff. But this one here brings a couple of extra features. It has a 75-watt light bar built into the bottom of the front bar there, which mixes, I think, 6 floodlights and 9 spotlights, or the other way around. So there's a yellowy white mixture of light to make it actually do something rather than look pretty, and you can control that from inside the car, as we shall see in a minute. It also has this Amarok branded aluminium marine grade bash plate underneath the front there that protects that part of the vehicle and actually bolts to the chassis of the car. It's not just a tack on piece of tat. The wheels here are 18-inch, they're not 20s. They still have Pirelli Scorpion all-terrain tyres, but these are AT4 Plus, which means they're more knobbly than the standard one. They're 265 60 18s instead of 275 50 20s. They do make a difference to the grip of the vehicle. It has the 40mm lifted front suspension like the normal W series Amarok, so it doesn't have that sort of bum in the air stance that a normal Amarok has. It's lifted and nice and even, which I think looks really nice and suits the shape of the car. And it has retuned dampers and stuff, and has had quite a lot of tuning done off-road to make this sort of just more of a bush basher than the other ones, which you could take to a track day. That's how well an Amarok handles. As for the rest of the vehicle, this one has an optional snorkel, which is just under $1,400, which you can hear sucking away when you're driving it. We have 580X decals along the side here with this little tyre print here based upon the actual tyre tread of the Pirelli Scorpion AT4s. We have rock sliders along here that are made of high strength steel that also bolt to the chassis under the car for you to protect the sills and also to slide it along if you're going really deep into off-road country. That's something. We still have the wheel arch flares of the normal W series, the mud flaps and the decals at the back, and just the general look of it. I think this is really a handsome dual cab. You would never know that this is well over a decade old and poised for replacement. This will have 600 made, of which only a couple of hundred have been done so far. The last few months will be the end of production coming from Argentina, where this current Amarok is produced, and from the end of the year the new generation Amarok will come from South Africa and will be nothing like this. It'll be a little bit like a Ford Ranger, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But it still has a 3,500 kilo brake towing capacity, it still has 253mm of ground clearance, it's still permanent four-wheel drive, and it still has 4 disc brakes. So a lot of those things, even though the Amarok is more than a decade old, are still right at the cutting edge of where a dual cab can be, which might seem like faint praise, but it's the truth. This is still a really good machine. Other changes to the W580X include custom underbody protection and bash plates. It has a cycle breather kit for the front and rear differentials, the transfer case and the transmission. But other than those things, it's pretty much the same as a normal W580. Oh, it also has the rear damper tune, but then that's part of the whole suspension design. This is more like the standard W580, so it doesn't have the sports bar of the 580S. It doesn't have the tray liner of that, so this huge tray that fits a Euro pallet will need to have an aftermarket accessory added to it. But I think it looks really good. Doesn't need that sailplane, definitely needs a tray liner. Now this W580X has the one other option available for this vehicle, and that is these front seats. They're 14-way electric ergo comfort with Vienna leather and 2-position heating. They have these manually adjustable under thigh extenders, and anyone who's driven a standard Amarok will know that these are way, way better than that. They do make this a lot more comfortable. We have these W embroidery in here for Walkinshaw. Other than that, it's sort of fairly standard Amarok in here. We do have this piano black gloss through this section here. We have dual zone climate control. We have Discover Pro navigation, which is very much 10 years ago, but still it's something. We have these very clear instruments, the steering wheel from a Mark 7 Golf. There's a lot of sort of updating over time that has made the Amarok really good. The W580X also has its own rubberized floor mats with this sort of honeycomb pattern and a W580X badge down the side. We even have carpeted door bins, like lined door bins, that'll take things like easily a camping bottle or a full 1.5 litre bottle. And so it's that level of practicality that really underpins how great this Amarok generation is. We also have a custom LED light bar button here, so it's sort of designed to match in with the other Volkswagen fonts, which is really good. We've got ESC off, rear diff lock, and the off-road button that does for the ESC, because we don't have low range here. Remember, we've just got full-time 4-wheel drive and an 8-speed automatic with a very low first gear, so that's what makes up for not having that feature. The rest of the interior is really, really easy to use and just about what makes the Amarok good, which is this stunning level of vision. We've got a really low cowl here. You can just see the bonnet out in front, really low window line, so much vision and so much space. The Ranger-based Amarok is going to have to try extremely hard to be better than this, because this is still really, really good. We've got this lovely wide armrest in the center here with a bin in the middle, although it's not lined. 2 cup holders in here, a rubberized tray at the front here, a cigarette lighter, old school, a 12-volt outlet here, and in the tray on top of the dash, and another one in the back. And just all of that stuff makes this the sort of car that you could drive every day to work, but then also do the off-roading and the towing and that sort of stuff. This is still close to being, or if not the benchmark for a dual cab ute, and it's more than a decade old. So the new one is going to have to be really good to beat this. Now, I suppose you could look at the back seat of the Amarok and go, given that it's got an almost 3.1 metre wheelbase, it doesn't really have a whole lot of leg room and knee room, and this is sitting behind myself isn't much, but this seat is so high that it's like sitting in the grandstand at the football, like so much higher than the front seats, and this seat is just still excellent. All 3 positions are as comfortable as each other. It is a true 3-seater across the back here, which not all dual cabs are. In fact, most of them aren't. This middle position is still shit, whereas in the Amarok it is absolutely not. The trim quality is just the same as the front, this 2-tone grey and charcoal Vienna leather. All the stitching and the trim is all pretty good inside here. We have B-pillar grab handles to help you up, which are really quite big. We've got damped grab handles in the roof. We've got 1-touch up and down power windows for all 4 doors. The rear doors still have carpet lining in them and still easily take a camping bottle or a 1.5 litre bottle in there. And just that sort of stuff, again, underpins how good this Amarok is, and this 580X just adds that level of embellishment on the top to make it feel a little bit more special. Even this dark headlining here with this sort of old school Volkswagen pattern in it is not oppressive because you've got so much vision. And while you don't have air vents in here, you've just got this one little sort of tacked on 12-volt outlet and a pair of tacked on cup holders on the transmission tunnel down here. Doesn't really need it. The cabin's so big, the vents are there feeding through. This is still dual cab first class motoring. The combined fuel consumption figure for the Amarok turbo diesel V6 is 9.5 litres per 100 kilometres. The warranty for Volkswagen in Australia is 5 years or unlimited kilometres, where the recommended servicing for the Amarok V6 is every 12 months or 20,000 Ks. Now, over 5 years, that servicing total is $3,875, but currently until June the 30th, 2022, you can get a 5-year service plan that only makes you pay for 3 years, and that's $2,050. Over the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer paid $1,157 to comprehensively insure a Volkswagen Amarok. However, everybody's situation is different, and your premium will vary based on things insurers take into account, like where you live, your driving history, and whether you garage your Amarok. It's from this position in the W580X behind the wheel where the main changes for this vehicle are evident, because two of those three things, the suspension tune and the wheel and tyre package, are what affects the driving experience. Now, we've already looked at those wheels, the 18-inch forged wheels designed in Melbourne, which are very cool, have this nice deep dish design about them, and have those knobbly Pirelli Scorpion 18s on them. They are a more grainy tyre when you're driving. We're on a pretty smooth road here, and you can feel a degree of knobbliness to the way that it drives. And then there's the suspension tune. So the twin tube dampers, front and rear, have been retuned to handle the rigours of off-road driving. And they are quite firm, but they don't necessarily ruin the ride of the Amarok. Let's be honest, no Amarok rides super smooth. No dual cab really, other than the Ranger Raptor and the odd exception to the rule, ride really smoothly. So it's not really a criticism, it's just firm. Once you start to get up it though on curvy roads, you realise that all of that balance that is in any other Amarok is absolutely evident in the W580X. This is a nicely balanced, really almost chuckable, I suppose, dual cab, given that it weighs almost 2,300 kilos and has quite a lot of height to its body. We're also in a 2 metre wide vehicle here, so this is not a small dual cab, 5.2 metres long, but given all of those limitations, or theoretical limitations, plus the knobbly tyres, it's still a really good thing to drive. You could cruise in it every day to work, to school, to the shops, whatever, and then take it off-road, and then chuck a boat in it, and all that other stuff that people do to this, and this is a really competent vehicle. It probably wouldn't be as fast around a racetrack like Wakefield Park as the normal 20-inch wheeled W Series Amarok, or even an Ultimate or something like that is. Those Amaroks are quite astounding in how well they handle a circuit situation. So that's not what the 580X is about, yet it still has all of their dynamic pleasure principles, I suppose. It also has the same drivetrain as those cars, and it is an immense drivetrain. Volkswagen still hasn't confirmed what the drivetrains are going to be in the next generation Amarok, other than that they're going to be 4-cylinder and V6. But given that it's built in a different factory to the Ford, there's a chance that it might still retain this engine, because this engine is terrific. It's a 3-litre turbo diesel V6. It has 190 kilowatts from 3,250 RPM to 4,500 RPM, which is a huge plateau for a diesel. And the torque is 580 Newton meters from 1,400 RPM to 3,000 RPM. So in terms of filling out the power and torque curve with a continental shelf of grunt, this turbo diesel V6 is exceptional at it. Matched with an 8-speed automatic, they claim 0 to 100 in 7.3 seconds, and there's absolutely no disputing that this Amarok isn't quick. It has 200 kilowatts on overboost for 10 seconds when you're overtaking, so when you flatten it or you're in sport mode, you have another 10 kilowatts to add that sort of extra level of passive safety. This one here does have a snorkel fitted to it, so with the window up, you can hear a little bit of sucking on the outside. It sounds like Darth Vader having a toke on a vape, but when you've got the window down, it sounds like you're inside the vape that Darth Vader's toking on, because it's quite loud. But you buy a snorkel for a reason. If you don't want that, save $1,400, go on a holiday somewhere and just leave the air intake into the underbonnet area. What ultimately though is killing this Amarok generation globally, I suppose, being at the end of its life, is that it doesn't have some of the safety systems that are starting to be expected even in commercial vehicles like this. Despite the fact that this is such a good commercial vehicle, it is still a commercial. It doesn't have AEB, it doesn't have rear side airbags, it doesn't have lane keep assist. A lot of those things, apart from the AEB, I suppose, could be looked at and gone, well, they're just safety gimmickry, and they do annoy a lot of people, but they also are starting to become expected, and that's how you get a good crash test rating. The ANCAP rating for this ute, and I think it was the first one to get 5 stars, pretty sure that it was such a long time ago that there's no way that it would get that now. Hence why the new generation Amarok is bringing 20 new safety systems. 20. We've just hit a bumpy road here, and you can see that there's a little bit of movement in the 580X, but it's still not uncomfortable. For all of its sort of off-road bias and all that sort of stuff, this is still a really competent capable, grippy dual cab with a lot of passive safety. It doesn't have those features, but it does have full-time four-wheel drive. It does have really strong brakes, and it does have that immense engine up front. And you combine all of that with the vision and the comfort of these seats, which do cost $3,700, but I think they're worth every cent. You can kind of see why people really, really like the W Series Volkswagen Amarok. Now, the one side benefit of the Amarok, especially these W Series ones, but also even a general Amarok, is that they're actually a sports ute hidden under a cloak of utility. There's so much balance and driver appeal in this vehicle that all the changes that Walkinshaw makes to the W Series, even on these knobbly tyres, it's still really fun to drive. You can have such a good time behind the wheel in this that it is a really, truly a tremendous jack of all trades, blended with all of the great attributes that an Amarok already has. So there's so much to like here, and 80 grand might seem like a lot to spend on a dual cab, but I think that this one gives you many, many layers of ability. I think the W580X very much sets out what Walkinshaw Automotive and Volkswagen Australia wanted to achieve with this vehicle, and that is to keep all of the everyday utility and drivability and driver appeal that the Amarok has inherently and has pretty much always had, especially as a V6, and then add some extra stuff on it to give it that extra layer of usability off-road. You know, the rock sliders, the suspension tune, the knobbly tyres, being able to get a snorkel. Admittedly, the wading depth isn't as high as some other competitors, but it's still really capable off-road, and it doesn't need to have low range for much of the time, although I imagine if that's all you did, then maybe you might want to buy something else. But I have never been in an off-road situation where an Amarok can't handle the rough stuff. It also looks really good too. And so the next generation of Amarok is going to need to be really good to be better than this. There is going to be a Panamericana model of the next model that'll have its own off-road tune and stuff, which is a global model, be very much inspired by something like this, but the W Series surely is set to continue in the next generation. So as the sort of unintentional farewell variant for the Amarok, I think the 580X is actually a really good thing. Let us know what you think below in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video, hit the notification bell, and thanks for watching Chasing Cars.